Hello YouTube. I've decided to start a video blog about a topic that is often ridiculed and laughed at and not fully well understood. And this happens to be on the topic of being transgender in America. If you're, I am transgender. If you don't know what that means I was born male, but I went through the surgical process to become female, given the constraints of our current medical technologies and abilities. It's a very involved process, and it's one that takes a lot of dedication and perseverance, and you have to have a very tough skin to make the change. It's not to be taken lightly. There's a lot of consequences in doing this, both good and bad. About myself, I was born male, and my childhood was good. I lived humbly, grew up kind of on the poor side of things, and my father worked a lot, and my mother raised me. I wasn't so much a mama's boy or anything like that. I remember having buckets full of G.I. Joes and Transformers and Hot Wheels and trains and planes and things like that, and I played with them. And, as a child you learn to play with those things, and it's a social construct. This is what boys play with, this is what girls play with. But yet, I always was interested in what the girls were playing with, and I knew better, even at an early age, that I need to follow and do what the boys are doing. And when I did stray, I was socially correct to go play with the boys and do these things. And but even at that time, I felt different. I just knew that I was a little different, and I didn't quite understand. I was kind of shy and timid, very emotional as a child. I mean, what child isn't, right? But I was very effeminate, just to say. And I think my parents told me later on in life that they noticed this in me at an early age. So when I came out to them about being transgender, it wasn't quite a shock, but still, given our contemporary society, it's still pretty heavy duty to come out. So from childhood, I would say about the age of 3 to 4 to 5, I knew I was different. I did the boy things and such, and there came a time, what I call my latency period, where gender, who I was, wasn't really on my mind too much. And I would say that happened from about the age of 6 to 13. And at that time, I was a bookworm and more into learning and science and technology and math and history. So, and two, this was also the Nintendo generation, so I wound up getting a Nintendo Entertainment System. And, and playing a lot of Nintendo, and I got pretty overweight as a child. Around the age of 13, I started to have what I call my soft puberty. I had sort of effeminate features physically, and I didn't really virilize very much when in high school, and that's when I also started feeling incongruent with who I was, because I noticed that girls' breasts were getting bigger and their hips were getting wider, and I wasn't getting that, and I was wondering, how come this isn't happening to me, and why do I have this thing between my legs? I don't like it. I kind of like what the girls have. And so high school was really difficult for me. At the time, I lived in small town Texas, and in small town Texas, you either were in the band or you did agriculture or you did football. And I wasn't really much into any of those things. So I was kind of a social outcast, had very few friends. A lot of people bullied me and teased me and called me fag and queer and homosexual and all the, usual childhood things. But I just knew I was different. And there were lots of lonely nights in high school, and if you want to use the term, I cross-dressed in my own little room. It's the only place I could do it. It's the only place I could be myself. How I felt. It was 10 by 12 foot room. And it was kind of my sanctuary, and it was kind of a lonely time, but I did the best I could. I saw that college was a means to have a better life, and in small town Texas during the 90s, there really was not good information for college, the process of going to college. It was still in that era where, the rich kids went to college, and, the lower class kids just kind of stayed in the town and worked at the gas station or Walmart or worked in the fields or baling hay and such. So, but I wanted to have a better life, and I wasn't a rich kid, so I did fairly well in school. It wasn't scholarship material, but I wasn't either bottom of the barrel. I was in the top third of my class. So I wound up taking the ASVAB and scored very high on the ASVAB, and the Navy recruiter approached me and asked me, have you ever considered joining the military? And in my family, we had a lot of people from the Navy, and so there was a lot of pressure. I don't say pressure, but there's a lot of influence. Well, join the Navy, it's a good way to go to college and see the world. So because of my score on the ASVAB, I qualified for the top programs that they offered, such as the cryptographer school and the radioman school, the electronics school, and the nuclear power program. So I decided to go with the nuclear power program because I was really interested in science and technology, and it was the hardest course they offered and the longest course they offered in the Navy. So, jokingly, I also felt that it would make a man out of me. But, so I went in. It was the first time I had been away from home in Texas, and I wound up going successfully through the entire Navy nuclear power program, and I chose the machinist mate route, and I wound up going to the Bangor, Washington, and did 2 tours on an SSBN. And I struggled with who I was, my identity, all through high school and all through the Navy. And I didn't join the Navy to go hang around with a bunch of guys. I went there for educational benefit and experience. And the Navy was really rough on me. There were the rumors, there were the snickers, there was, are you gay, or what's, it was this typical kind of jabbing that the guys do. But nonetheless, it was really, it was a constant reminder that I was battling internally. And unfortunately, I began to drink when I was in the Navy. And I didn't drink when I was in high school at all. So I just got tired of the pressure of myself and the situation. So I wound up trying to commit vehicular suicide, basically getting so drunk that my death would appear to be as a DUI-related death instead of a suicide. And I wound up flipping a convertible into a ditch. And my blood alcohol level at the time was 0.274, so I was very intoxicated. which probably saved my life, ironically. So, having that happen, I wound up being discharged with a general under honorable conditions. So, I came back home and I felt like an utter failure, like an utter disgrace. How am I going to face my family? So, they were just happy I was alive. And I came back to my hometown and I got a job immediately at a local manufacturing plant, and I worked the night shift during the summer, and I decided, I'm going to go to college. I'll get the loans and whatever necessary to go. So I worked a few months, saved some money, and then I went to college, or actually university. University was still very lonely for me. I was still sorting through these feelings I had. I didn't want to date. I didn't want to complicate things because I had only just begun to really conceive of the idea of transitioning and going through the whole surgery and the process. And this was at the time when the internet was just still growing and still fresh for me. So again, I spent a lot of lonely nights, kind of isolated. I worked part-time, I worked full-time, I went to school part-time, I went to school full-time, balancing between the two, and that was how the first 3 years of college went. And I eventually went to a university in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I decided, well, I'm going to get really buff and try to do the whole manly masculine thing, and I joined a fraternity. And well, that plan did not work out and it backfired. I had dated a girl who was in a sorority, or a sister sorority, and I don't know how she found out, but she either went on my computer or she went through my things. And immediately thereafter, she broke off with me and didn't want to have anything to do with me. Like, okay. So a few days later, all the frat boys started laughing and giggling and making fun of me, and I'm like, oh, great. So what's going on? And I had a little bit of an idea of what happened. So I got drunk one night with the boys, and they asked me, are you gay? Are you this? Are you that? And, I opened up a little bit too much, and from then on, I was pretty much ostracized and just, I hate to use the word, but I was socially destroyed there during the college. And since it was such a small school, I felt it was best that I bow out gracefully. And it was at that point that I realized that I cannot keep kicking the can down the road. I have to face this, or my life's going to be miserable in hell and I will not be happy. So I went home, my hometown once again. I worked for some time and I did my research, and I found a school in the local Dallas-Fort Worth area which I considered a pocket of liberalism, a progressivism. So I wound up going to this small little school and performing my transition there. My transition went pretty rapidly, pretty well. It was in college or in university that I started taking hormones on my own. I researched deeply into every aspect of what's necessary to transition, from paperwork to the bureaucracies to the hormones to the biological, biochemical, everything. And I started the process, and the results were, I started the hormones in October of one year, and within 2 months' time, I had started feminizing. And in 3 months' time, I was living androgynously. And people were basically hit or miss, which natal sex I was. So I knew that I was doing something right. I knew that this was meant to be. It was about a year and a half into my college, and it was about a year and a half into my days at the university that I went full-time, which means I live in the female gender without switching back and forth. And it was at that time that I had been consistently seen as female and perceived as female. And I realized it was working out, and this is what I needed to do with my life. So I began to, get together the paperwork and make the necessary changes and start seeing a therapist to get documentation for the Harry Benjamin Standards of Care for future surgery for documentation purposes. It was late in my college days that I met I met Sandra, and Sandra is not my partner's real name, but for the sake of this, it will be her name. That's when I met Sandra, and we had met on MySpace when it was still new and fresh and popular. And we just hit it off really well, and it was one of those love at first sights. I had never loved anybody in my life before, and I just fell in love with her. And it was kind of like one of those romances where it happens really fast, and because she was in a similar situation, she kind of moved in with me, and we were basically best friends, and she was on the outs with her family and felt a little alienated with her friends, and so that's how Sandra and I got together. I graduated from university, and I wound up getting a good job with a good company, and they were a progressive company, and they offered benefits for the gay community, or their gay employees, and were progressive. They recognized domestic partnerships, even though Texas does not recognize domestic partnerships. Regarding transgender care, they cover the hormones and the psychological and psychiatric aspects of it, but they didn't cover the medical surgical part of it. So to me, that was, it's like putting a Band-Aid over a wound, a gaping wound. You're only helping to alleviate the symptoms, not help to fix the problem. So I petitioned the company for the insurance to cover the surgery, the genital reassignment surgery, or the genital reconstructive surgery. And it took a year of perseverance and advocacy, self-advocacy, and I finally was able to persuade the company to cover it, and the changes were amended, and as soon as I got word that it was going to be in effect, I scheduled a date with Dr. Marcy Bowers and had the surgery in Colorado when she still performed the surgery in Colorado. The surgery went well. I'm very happy with the results with it. My quality of life has vastly improved. My mental health has vastly improved up until recently. My partner and I had been together for 5.5 years, and unfortunately, Sandra committed suicide about 6 months ago, and my life was shattered. And there's a whole set of instances and happenstances and repercussions that happened from her death. And I've been through a lot of pain, and her family has been through a lot of pain. And I'm at a point in my life where I have very little left to lose. I lost a best friend, the person who I loved is gone. And I just feel it's time to speak out and make an awareness of the issues of being transgendered in this day and age. So thank you for your time, and I will be making more videos on being transgendered in America and my experiences also. Thank you.